So good morning, everyone, and a warm Pacific greetings to you all joining from Fiji, Tonga, Vanuatu. Most of you may know me already. I am Ludovic Branland. I'm the Nature-Based Solution Advisor at the Pacific Community within the Climate Change Division, and I will be facilitating our session today to give some break a bit to Rakeshni. This is the fifth webinar within the PPIN series, and this one is designed to take us deeper into the practical realities of designing ideally a strong and fundable nature-based solution projects. So today, the idea is to focus on a crucial phase, which is effective planning. Together, today we will walk through the early stages of the NbS project development cycle, but we will also hear from my colleague from SPC and partners as well, with direct experience in monitoring, evaluation, integration, finance, budgeting, accessing funding, and climate finance in more specifically. We designed this session as the previous one to be as interactive as possible and participatory. So we really encourage you to share any question, reflection as we go. I mean, if you have any question, please feel free to write them in the chat or either to raise your hands during the dedicated Q&A sessions that we will have. I also would like to acknowledge the fact that it's a very ambitious topic that we will try to somehow cover within 2 hours. We are well aware that this could be a dedicated week training, but we won't have the time to go into a lot of details. So the idea is really to share with you some key insights, reflections for you, some key takeaway, so that you are more equipped when you will start thinking about developing a project. And once again, I would like to reiterate the fact that SPC remains committed to provide support to you all. So even within the frame of this project or outside of it, if you feel that you need some specific support related to the area we covered, feel free to get back to Rakeshni, me, or the team, and we can discuss any potential support we can provide to you. So once again, welcome. Thank you for being part of this community, I would say. It starts to be a community. And let's begin with a quick interactive survey that will be launched by Jacinta and Rakeshni. So I give the floor to one of you, maybe to guide us through this. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Requesting if you could scan the QR code. This is just going to be a very short Slido, and you could fill in your questions. But first, you will have to access this. You will have to scan this QR code.
If any issue accessing it, just let us know. That's already 3 good answers. Time, we will see that's often one issue, but also a key of success at the same time. Complex requirement, that's very true. To comply with many donor requirements. And that becomes a job in itself. Priorities, we will touch on that. Community engagement, that's exactly what we're gonna discuss in the first session. Access to information. Where to find the funding, which funding opportunities do we have? return on investment. That's a key and very difficult one. I hope that you've been able to get some good insight from the previous webinar on cost-benefit analysis, but as you've seen, that's still challenging somehow. Proposal writing, yeah. I'm glad to see community engagement, because that's the first topic we will cover. Let me know, Jacinta, when you think we are done.
Yeah, I think one more participant is typing. So right. Oh, there's two now. Okay.
No problem. No problem. We have a bit of time. That's important for us to know more what are the challenges you are facing, so that we can better shape any upcoming support, or also update the 3 remaining webinars.
I think that's all. So
Okay.
thank you everyone for your input, and now handing it over to Ludo.
Thank you very much. So time, proposal writing, community engagement, that's a very good summary. Definitely, we are all facing this issue. So thank you for taking the time to answer this survey. So without any further ado, I am pleased to be the first presenter for today. And this first session is about what really
Share the next slide.
Oh, yeah. I was just introducing while you were sharing. So yeah, like I was saying, my session today is really about what really sets successful project apart, which is effective planning and the very early stage of development. We will cover how to move from understanding real community and ecosystem needs to testing feasibility and finally engaging the right people. If you can go on just the first cover slide, Rakeshni, please. My goal for this presentation is to give you again some practical framework, key takeaway for turning your good ideas into implementable and sustainable projects. Are you able to?
Ludo, just give me 1 second, please.
Yeah, sure. Just waiting for the slides to show up, so I'm not going to repeat myself. Perfect. You can move straight to the second slide. Thank you.
Okay.
So effective planning, from needs assessment to collaborative action. How do we do that? Let's start with a quote that I like specifically, that means a lot to me, and also I think which summarize pretty well what we're going to cover in this session, is that alone we go faster, definitely, but together we go further. And that's what matters. When you were highlighting time as a challenge for accessing, for developing projects, and unfortunately, like consulting with the right person takes time, but it allows you to get like a way more sustainable projects. This slide is, no, you can back to the previous slide, Rakeshni, please. Yeah. This slide is really about why this topic matters. In the Pacific, we know that the context is complex. We have limited resources, and skipping planning for developing a project often leads to failure. We've all seen projects that were not grounded in local needs, that struggled with uptake or could not even secure funding, because the logic of implementation wasn't really clear. But at the contrary, when planning is done right, it brings local ownership, donor confidence as well, but also long-term impact. And that's what it is about. You need to match local ownership, local needs with donor confidence, so they are confident in paying and funding the project and the activities. And what we see is that effective planning is often underestimated, especially when deadlines are tight, with a very tight window for developing and submitting a project abstract, or when funding seems to favor very quick action, which is not very sustainable. But the reality is that poor planning is one of the main reasons why projects tend to fail. If we don't take the time, you see it's again about the time, if we don't take the time to clarify the logic, check the feasibility, and engage meaningfully with the communities, we risk to end up with mismatches between the problem and the solution. And funders will pick up on that. From my experience, having provided regional technical assistance for the development of regional NbS project within the Kiwa initiative, I can tell you so many projects had very good idea, but they were not able to transfer this idea into a relevant and well thought project activities. And unfortunately, many projects haven't been accepted because of that. Despite the experience of the stakeholder, despite the relevance of the issue, the project didn't have the time to be developed as expected. But when the planning is strong, it changes everything. It will strengthen your local ownership. It will increase the confidence of the donors and set up also long-term success and replicability. Next slide, please, Rakeshni. So when we talk about planning and project development, we often think of planning as linear, but it's more a cycle, as you can see on the screen. And we identify for that 4 essential preliminary stages for project development. The first one, and we will go through each of them in the following slide. The first one is a needs assessment. What do people and ecosystem actually need? You see, we emphasize the link between people and ecosystem because that's the definition and the nature of nature-based solution. So you need to ask yourself, what do people need? What the ecosystem needs? What are the issues? Then we move to the feasibility study. What can be realistically implemented? Then people, who needs to be involved and how they need to be involved. And then you connect the dots. You've got your strategic framing. How do we turn all this idea into a coherent, fundable project concepts? And these are foundational building blocks. If we skip any of them, everything that will come after, like monitoring, evaluation, project governance, even communication, and more importantly, activity implementation, will suffer. They will be weak, and you will need more time to go over it. Then when you plan it well in advance with the right person, with the right methodology, then you just need, when you start the implementation, you know exactly what you have to do, and you just implement. Next slide, please. So let's have a look at this first step, which is conducting a needs assessment. Again, we've got colleagues able to provide like way more in-depth training on how to engage community, conduct a needs assessment. We don't have the time to go through all of this today, but we remain, again, available if you need more information, more tips, more support in that. So needs assessment is about getting clarity. We're not just identifying problems. We are exploring what are the causes, asking what has changed, and co-defining what the success of the project will look like. And this must be done, and that's very important, with the communities and not for them. We tend to see, and I've seen in my career, so many people believing that they knew what the community were needed, and they were like developing a project on their side with very little, if no consultation. And then when it comes to implementation, we realize that these needs are not very understood, the activity are not really realistic. And that's why you need to conduct this needs assessment. Ask people, what do you need? How can I help you? And that's very, very important. When you start a project by understanding your beneficiaries, your community needs, and your ecological priorities as well, because again, we are within the frame of nature-based solution, you are directly applying criteria 1 and 2 of the IUCN NbS global standards. All of you attended the entire PPIN webinar series, and we presented these indicators and criterion in the second webinar. And as a reminder, this criterion 1 is about effectively addressing societal challenges. And criterion 2 is about the scale, the design at scale. And that's very important because you see this needs assessment, this consultation is embedded directly into the NbS IUCN global standards as a good practice. And this is where we start, not with the activity. We often tend to see, we want to do this, we want to plant mangrove, we want to restore this forest, we want to restore this coral reef, we want to manage this area. But don't start with activity, start with the questions. Need assessment means that you need to understand the root causes of the challenges that the communities and the ecosystem are facing. You can use like multiple tools. You've got the participatory rural appraisal tool, climate vulnerability assessment. You can use any tools that you like. Some of them are very, very fancy, but you don't have to. I mean, the most important for you is to ask the people directly, what are the issues you are facing? What has changed over time? What used to work? What will be for you a solution? And this process must be inclusive. It must be co-developed with chiefs, women groups, youth, technical officers, people who really understand the system and the context. Not only technical people with a scientific background and technical background, but also people who are living there, who are like facing this issue on day-to-day basis. And every time I go to a community for conducting a needs assessment, discussing with people, I always try to put myself in their shoes, knowing that if someone will come to my village, to my city and tell me, oh, this is what we have to do here in your place, I'm not sure that none of us will be very happy about this approach. So again, we are having some expertise, but we want to have this expertise at the disposal of the communities. And again, it's a co-design process. It takes time to conduct this needs assessment, definitely, but you are more than encouraged. That's crucial for you. That's a very starting point for developing a project. Talking with people, building this relationship, we'll get back to this in a moment, and understanding this need, asking questions. Then you will have the time to discuss the action. But first, question yourself, question the people. Then let's move to the second steps, which is a feasibility assessment. So next slide, please, Rakeshni. Feasibility assessment. So once you've got your clear picture of the problem following the needs assessment, you need to test or to verify whether your nature-based solution, your activities you are proposing are actually a good fit. Again, conducting these feasibility studies as feasibility assessments is not just about technical checks. It's about assessing the ecological, the financial, but also the social and financial feasibility. And the IUCN nature-based solution standards, again, remind us to look at potential co-benefit and constraints early on, during the early stage of development, from land tenure to biodiversity gain, all core aspects of the criterion 3, 4, and 5 of the standards. As a reminder again, from the webinar 2, criterion 3 is about the result in net gain to biodiversity. Criterion 4 is about economical viability, and criterion 5 is about inclusive, transparent, and empowering governance process. If you do this feasibility study, this needs assessment, and your stakeholder engagement, you're more likely to reach this criterion. You need to ask yourself, in order to make your evaluation across the 4 dimensions, which you can see on the slide, is this project environmentally appropriate? Is it socially appropriate? Are the community buying in? Are the materials that we need for the actual work and the skills locally available? If not, where are we going to source them? Will the community will buy in, will support the project, will maintain the activities? How can we fund it? What will be the short, medium, and long-term funding strategies? So again, there is a number of tools available. I encourage you to look at the one you feel the more comfortable with. It doesn't have to be something very fancy again. The most important is that you consider and you're asking this question with your partners and among your team. The first very simple tool that we like to use is the SWOT analysis. And that's pretty useful when you go within communities to brainstorm and discuss with them. SWOT is standing for S for strength, W weaknesses, or opportunities, and T for threats. So it's a techniques to put on paper all the pros and cons basically of your project so that you can take them into account and balance your trade-off, which is again also another criteria of the NbS standards. As you can see, the standards are covering quite a lot of these aspects, and this is where you'll be encouraged to look when you develop a project at the assessment tool, even if you don't build this assessment tool very precisely, at least if it gives you guidance on what to look at. You don't want to design something perfect on paper, but that couldn't be delivered in practice. What we recommend usually is that start small, and you will have the time later to scale your project. Ensure first that it can work in this specific context, and then you can upscale. But again, don't start rushing into the action. Ask the question, start to think small, feasible, and then you have the opportunity to upscale and extend. Next slide, please. So now it's about engaging the right people at the right time. That's what stakeholder engagement is. You must have a strategy to it, return or not, but you have to think about this engagement strategy. How are we going to engage with them? And not only a one-time, one-shot, but that's a continuous process. So engagement is not only a one-off consultation, like I just said. It's a continuous, but also respectful process. We know that in the Pacific, more than anywhere else, building relationships takes time, but it's a time which is well spent. You will see the benefits of it because you will build this relationship and this trust. And again, that's reflected in the criterion 5 of the standards, which is about the inclusive, transparent, and empowering governance process. To do so, we are all aware about some good practices. We know that Talanoa traditional dialogues are key. But you need to ensure that your engagement is not generic, is not a fit for all, but it's structured, it's inclusive, it's meeting indicators around free and prior informed consent as well, making sure that people are well informed, they are consent to be part of the project. And that will help you to build trust and project success. You can use any method that you feel relevant for talking with your audience, but please respect the culture, of course, and you need to keep them updated. It's a long, again, continuous process. And it's not only about engaging who will be the actor of the project, but it's also to think about anyone who will be directly or indirectly impacted, actor, active within the project to make sure that you've got this stakeholder mapping and that you know exactly who will do what and when and how. And this is about really when it comes to when I say, again, introducing that for, together we go further, it's about true co-design. And it's not only a token consultation. That's very important. Next slide, please. And I know I'm going to run out of time soon, but that's fine. So now, once you've done your needs assessment, you look at some feasibility, you've done your stakeholder engagement strategy, it's now time to connect the dots. And planning helps you to lead you to a shared vision, something that the community will believe in and that the donors can fund. Because when you connect the needs, the feasibility, and the people, you will reach a shared vision of your project. Everyone will buy in. And again, that will give confidence to the donors to fund the project. And a good project concept is a project that reflects the local priorities, which is technically and socially feasible, and that identify clearly which are the co-benefits. That's why I told you the importance to identify all stakeholders directly or indirectly involved in the project, but also the risks so that you can try to mitigate them. And align, of course, with national plans, donor priorities, and other relevant frameworks. And this is what increases your likelihood of support, of funding, or implementation success. What you need to check at this stage, when you reach that stage, is it grounding in the local priorities again? Is it feasible? Are there co-benefits? Is it aligned with the strategies? And how the stakeholder will be engaged? So if we get a look at the next slide, which is a quick takeaway again. As a recap, planning isn't about just ticking boxes. It's about really building the foundation of your project and what makes everything else possible. It's time consuming, I reckon that, but it's a much needed time that will help you to save time later on during implementation. So don't rush to design. We know that you've got specific timeline from donors that you need to respect, but don't rush. Start with question, not solution. Validate your needs. Engage early as possible. Test your feasibility and frame your project in a way that brings partners on board. Again, it's just not ticking a box, but that's what will make you the foundation. And let's be honest, I mean, we've all seen this. Rushing to action. We might have done it either ourselves, but if you skip the engagement, assuming a one model fits all, that won't lead to success. And you need to avoid this pitfall by listening more, taking the time, and validating your idea. What is very important, don't assume, co-create, consult, and validate. If that's a key takeaway that I need to summarize. I'm running out of time, but I will go just very quickly through one or two case studies for the next slide, and then I'll be done. And I give the floor to my colleague for the second presentation. Just one example, you will have the presentation and feel free to have a look at the two other case studies from Tonga and Fiji. But the first case study is like in Vanuatu, which is community-led coral gardening for coastal resilience, including 16 communities who are like doing coral gardening. How it relates to today's presentation and why I wanted to highlight this case study is that in terms of needs assessment, the communities have identified themselves through a consultation reef degradation as a key local concern for their livelihood. Then check the feasibilities, they identify that local had the knowledge on the coral reef, but also that they were backed up with some technical experts who would be able to provide training and do this as it has to be. And in terms of stakeholder engagement, they respected the customary marine tenure, for example. They made sure to engage the right people for the monitoring and so on. And so that's really a project that has been co-built, co-developed with the communities themselves, and that's having pretty good progress so far. I will stop there to stay on track. Thank you for your attention. Again, there is two more case studies in the slides that I invite you to have a look at. If you have any question, again, feel free to share them in the chat. We will address them after. But without further ado, I would now like to give the floor to my colleague, Leah, who's our Planning, Monitoring, and Evaluation Learning Advisor at SPC, and she will walk us through monitoring and evaluation concept. Thank you, Leah. The floor is yours.
Hi, colleagues. I hope you can hear me well. I'm going to talk about the importance of the MEL framework for the nature-based solution, and especially in the stage of your planning and the concept node development. Second. We don't have much time to go into the depths of the matter, but I'll try to explain like basic concept in terms of MEL and its purpose in the NbS proposals. And we'll look at some of the elements of the MEL system and MEL frameworks for the NbS related projects. Why MEL matters? Well, essentially, when you read the concept note, you can just scroll down to the MEL framework to be able to quickly understand what this proposal or project is about. It should be very concise and it should cover everything that was planned in the proposal. So without reading the whole proposal, if the MEL framework is robust enough, it should give you an idea of what this project is about. So MEL matters because it validates the effectiveness of nature-based intervention. It informs adaptive management and enhances transparency and what Luda was just presenting, the stakeholder engagement. In terms of, let's jump right into the matter. So what makes the MEL framework comprehensive and strong in the proposal is the logic behind it, and how it's built is through what is called cause and effect analysis, which leads to the development of the theory of change. And here is the visualization of how the cause and effect analysis is made. So it's important to formulate and manifest a problem with the support of your communities or stakeholders that you are working with or trying to work with. It's important that collectively manifestation of the problem is formulated. And through that, an immediate underlying and root causes are identified. And while we build a theory of change, it goes from addressing the root causes to underlying immediate to the actual solution to the problem. So in simple terms, a theory of change asks, if we do this, what will happen and why? It helps us visualize the pathways through which our actions are expected to lead to change. And more importantly, it also makes visible the assumptions that we are trying to address about behavior, system, policies, or ecosystems. Through theory of change, results chain is built as well, and you may be familiar with this kind of diagram. It's called a results pyramid or results chain, and it's comprised of key essential elements. In the previous theory of MEL, it used to be very linear, but as we develop this, becomes more of a circular approach, and we'll talk about this a bit later. So just to briefly cover that, and you may know about this already, but I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So by inputs, we mean the resources that we invest. It may be a funding, staff, tools, partnerships. Activities are what we do with these resources, like training, planting, assessments. Outputs are the immediate tangible deliverables, usually short term, such as hectares of land restored, people trained, or plants developed. Outcomes are the behavior of systematic change. These are longer term results that are achieved through the collection of outputs. Increased community resilience or awareness of something, or changes in policies. And finally, the impact is a long-term goal, a resilient ecosystem, for example, community sustainable development, or reduced climate vulnerability. So let's unpack a little bit of what we mean by results chain. So results begin at the outputs level. Very often we see this mistake in the MEL frameworks where activities are presented as results, such as, for example, training conducted is not a result by itself. It's an activity actually using the resources or the inputs. And the outputs here would be communities' resilience or skills obtained or used in a particular sector, or etc. So I'm giving here an NbS related example of what we mean by outputs, outcomes, and impact. And for the proposals, it is important that your outputs are strong enough, that this is something that are not over ambitious, not at the outcome level, because everything up from the outcome level is a shared responsibility or shared results. A single project cannot achieve an outcome. It's at least a shared result with the community or the government or sector specialist or other organizations as well. So I'm not going to read this. You'll receive the slide later on to be able to review it in detail. I'd like to emphasize on why aligning MEL with NbS objective is important. NbS MEL must be customized to reflect ecological, social, and governance outcomes. This means using cross-sectoral indicators that capture environmental regeneration, community resilience, and institutional ownership. So it's pretty much a system-based and design thinking. For example, if we talk about coastal restoration project, ecological indicators might include the percentage increase in mangrove cover or coral recovery rates. Social indicators could track the number of women and youth engaged in ecosystem-based livelihoods, and governance indicators may measure the integration of NbS into subnational climate adaptation plans and things like this. It's important to also consider strategic integration. So MEL framework should be contributing to the national adaptation planning or strategic documentation, the legislation, and also regional and international commitments. Important element of the good MEL framework is the robustness and rigor that you put in developing of an indicator. So there is a framework called SMART indicators, which is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So indicators describe how the intended results will be measured. It's called accountability. They should be objectively verifiable, repeatable measures of particular condition. There needs to be a unit of measure. So if it's a quantitative indicator in your targets, the formulation of the outputs, this should be reflected. Very often a pitfall is that we sometimes measure something quantitatively, but report more vaguely and qualitative, but without including the unit of measure. They force clarification of what is meant by the results, the fine print, and must be accompanied always by baseline and targets. And on the graph here, you can see what we mean by the baseline. Baseline is your starting point. It's a current level of achievement. When you're trying to solve the issue, the target is where you are aimed to be. And then the actual achievement is what you have managed to achieve in the given period of time. A few words about the MEL system. So monitoring and evaluation is not a one-off activity. It's ongoing process throughout the life cycle of a given project. So it's important that we plan well at the design stage. So we need to embed clear causal pathways from the outset. This is where the theory of change becomes foundational. Need to build a system of data collection and analysis, ideally on a regular basis. It's done through a function of monitoring in the MEL system. And there are currently some free-to-use tools like mobile tools, online dashboards, classical methods of data collection. But it's important that they are built from the start and data is collected on a regular basis to inform decisions. The tools might include perception studies, mapping tools, social media monitoring, thematic dashboards, and others. Quality assurance is another element. It should be independent from the project management, and ideally in an organization and in your proposal, the quality assurance function should be mentioned. How are you going to ensure that those results are going to be achieved? How are you going to monitor the quality of those results and things like that? In terms of project design and development process, as we said earlier, it's important that MEL shows a clear line of sight to the strategic alignment and national ownership to those strategic documentation and legislation. There should be a robust section on evidence-based and demand-driven, where you have consulted with stakeholders and direct beneficiaries, and you're going to check with them on a regular basis on how things are going. Inclusive and participative design is important when you build your MEL framework. Like when you plan to achieve a certain target, your communities, government, and other stakeholders need to be on board with those, as well as project review and approval. Having set up the technical working groups, the steering committees, and independent verification groups could be something that you could consider, and it will add additional strengths to your proposal. On data collection and management, it's important that you combine different tools, and you make sure that your MEL framework is strong enough to show that the data will be collected on a regular basis through contemporary tools, and that there is a certain investment in your budget for this purpose. Ludo has mentioned a lot about stakeholder engagement and how important it is for the MEL cannot be underestimated. Obviously, we need to engage communities and local authorities whenever we build the MEL system, and this should be reflected in the relevant section of the MEL framework. Need to build trust and legitimacy, and of course strengthen the community monitoring and capacity as well. A new approach to MEL is it's no longer a linear process. It focuses now more on an adaptive management of emergent and incremental change in complex situation. And NbS is a perfect example of a complex program where social economic elements along with environmental considerations are all intertwined. It's a process of discovering always what is unknown, listening on a regular basis to stakeholder voices, and through contemporary tools of data collection, this is now possible. Establishing the ground truth, and there are tools, and I'm going to share the resources with you on how to do that with almost no investment. And enabling local ownership and constant learning to adjust and adopt. I wanted to stop for a little bit on the importance of communications and MEL. One of the most overlooked but powerful synergies in any project or program is the relationship between monitoring, evaluation and learning, and the communications. Traditionally, MEL is seen as a back office function focused on collecting data, measuring results, and report. But communications is often treated as a front-end function, writing success stories, managing media, producing visibility materials, and etc. But in high-impact projects, especially in climate resilience and nature-based solution, these two functions must be deeply integrated. Because MEL generates the evidence while communications amplifies the meaning. So if you are able to show this relationship between MEL and communications in your proposals early on, I think this could be one of the attractive features in your proposal that could kind of stand you out from the crowd. Mail system track change, capture lessons, what works, what doesn't work. But the evidence need to be shared, shaped, and strategically framed to influence policy, inspire communities, and sustain momentum. So how this could work potentially is embed communications in your MEL processes. Findings don't just need to sit in the report, but they need to drive dialogue. Community voices should be elevated, not abstracted into indicators. Policy uptake is more likely because evidence is delivered through the right channels in the right format. So practically speaking, what can you do? And reflect in the proposal is involve communicators in evaluation, debriefs, and learning reviews. Using MEL data to inform infographics, stories of change, and social media content. Create feedback loops where findings are validated and refined through public dialogue. Sorry. Yeah, so this is just a snapshot of what are the tools that you can use for MEL and communications. I'm giving you here some of the examples of theory of change and the distinction between outputs, outcomes, and impacts. As well as example of key elements of the NbS related results framework for your perusal later on. In the conclusion, I'd like to share a couple of resources with you. I think we're going to meet another time where perhaps we could dive deeper into the particular topic of your interest. But I'll stop here and see if there are any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Leah. Very insightful presentation that connects well to what we presented earlier and the need to take that into account as early as possible. And thank you also for emphasizing the need when we are talking about nature-based solution to measure what are the socio-economic and environmental outputs, which can be a challenge in itself. But as you say, we dive deeper into that topic for the dedicated MEL webinar. Thank you so much, Leah. I see that Andres, you've got your hand raised. If it's for a question, may I ask you to wait for the Q&A session following Artie's presentation? Thank you, Andres.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you so much. Okay, without further ado, give me the floor to my colleague Artie Kumar, who's our finance team leader within the climate change division at SPC, who will guide us through budgeting for nature-based solution. Artie, the floor is yours. And the time management reminder, you're up to about 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Good morning. So basically on the budgeting for NbS or any particular project in that sense, if NbS, as we see, are cost-effective strategies that benefit both people and planet. For instance, mangrove restoration protects the coasts and also supports fisheries. The importance of budgeting in NbS is it's a robust budget turns visionary into actionable plans for securing grants or private investment. Transparent budgets build stakeholder trust and project credibility. It also ensures resource efficiency and accountability. It attracts investors and mitigates risk through long-term planning. There are few key components of a financial plan, and some of these may have been outlined in the previous webinars or the speakers before me. When we are doing financial plan, we need to ensure clear objectives, the cost estimation, who is going to fund those, and the monitoring and adaptation, which we just had from previous speaker. In a few steps to develop a financial plan, just as we had defined the SMART objectives, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Estimate costs with cost contingencies, map funding as to see who is funding those. We know the risk management, and there are some common risks which are financial, ecological, political, and you can assess them through likelihood versus impact and some mitigation strategies. And the final one is monitoring and evaluation. In terms of budgeting, diving deeper into budgeting, we should understand donor requirements, ensure the budget aligns with the project's goal and the donor's priority. When you have a budget, you must break down the project activities, list all activities that are tied to the project objectives. Example, trainings, workshops, procurement of infrastructure, goods, services, and each activity should have a corresponding budget. You may also estimate cost by category, categorize expenses based on the donor requirement. Common categories include direct costs that are linked to direct implementation of the project, and indirect costs, which could be overhead costs for the project. Match cost to the funding sources, specify which donor cost will cover which one, as at times there could be donor and co-funding, so you must specify which activity is funded by which donor or co-funded. You must also include currency and exchange rates. Normally there are different currencies in each country, and this is also a factor that affects during project budgeting and implementation. Justify each line item. Donors often require a budget narrative explaining why this expense is necessary. You must show the calculations, like how many workshops you are going to do in, if it is a 5-year project, which particular year this workshop is going to happen, and the cost associated to each workshop as an example here. And compliance with their policies, donor policies. So if we are seeking, let's say, GCF funding, we must know some of the rules that GCF has in place and shouldn't include budgets for those. For example, budgeting for catering and including alcohol, which is specifically not allowed. And review for compliance, ensure eligibility, cost effectiveness, and local laws are factored in. Format the budget. Usually for donors, they have specific templates, but if they don't, you can use Excel to put it in a structure that could be easily reviewed and approved by the donor. And lastly, when we have the budgets and it's under implementation, monitoring and reporting, which Leah has highlighted in terms of activities, but similarly, finance needs to be monitored and reported as well. So track your expenditure, document each transaction, ensure keeping receipts for all the transactions, reporting it to donor, and ensuring audit compliance. Common challenges in NbS budgeting: sometimes there is grants delayed or political shifts, donor priorities changing mid-project implementation, that are unpredictable funding. Some long-term sustainability could be projects collapsing after initial funding due to lack of maintenance, and stakeholder misalignment, government priorities changing. Solutions to overcome some of these changes maybe include some blended finance models. Maybe the CFU presenter would speak more on some of these funding mechanisms. Pilot budgets to attract proof of concept funding. We should, for risk mitigation, we should also include insurance, and lobby for NbS integration into national climate plans. And in the NDCs, I think these was also presented in the previous webinar. So we can see a clear linkage of all that to the finance and budgeting. Lessons learned from some of the previous projects that we have implemented: early engagement, transparent reporting, and tech-driven monitoring. Flexibility saves project, build in contingency funds as well, quantify benefits in investor or donor language. Policy alignment unlocks funding, align budgets with national policies to access public funds, and includes stakeholders, government, communities, and investors as presented by Ludo this morning. To conclude, I can say transparent budgets can help us build in trust and sustainability. Well-planned NbS budget doesn't just protect the nature, it also turns ecosystem into economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Arti. I think you provide good insight. And again, the idea is to provide key takeaway for you to look at specific aspects. That's a full job in itself to look at these financial and issues and budget. Thank you very much, Arti. So we reached now the Q&A session, but before we take the floor, we would like to ask you to turn on your camera, I guess. I will leave that to Jacinta because we will take, as usual, a quick group picture. So Jacinta, if you can guide us through this and what you want us to do.
Yes, so requesting everyone to turn on their cameras and give in their biggest smiles so that I could just take a picture of everyone. Okay. 1, 2, 3 big smiles. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jacinta. And nice to see for a brief time all your faces. Okay, Andres, maybe you would like to break the ice and start since you had your hand raised earlier during the presentation. Again, feel free to write your question in the chat or don't be shy, we're together, so feel free to take the mic. Andres?
Hi, hello. Thank you for the presentation. I have a question. Sorry, my name is Andres Toro from GGGI. I couldn't join the previous sessions, but I'm very interested in this topic of nature-based solutions. We're working on something in Vanuatu as well, so this topic is quite interesting to me. I had a question for Lilia. Leah.
Yeah.
Yes, I have a question for her regarding the communication and M&E. She mentioned that we usually, that projects usually take communications towards the end, like the lessons learned or the case studies. But I heard that she mentioned that we could strengthen our proposal if we have a different approach in communication. And I wanted to ask her if she can if you can expand on that slide, so I could know better what she meant, but by strengthening the communication and strengthening the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Andres, for your question. I'm sure Leah will be able to answer your question.
Hi, very good question, by the way, Andres. So yeah, I think communications is often overlooked as an effective tool to convey on evidence generated through MEL, and very often in the project design, these two are considered separate functions. But I think, and likewise, MEL and budgeting, for example, are also two distinct functions, which is true. But at the same time, I think these three can reinforce each other. I'm bringing budget as a third element because monitoring over the budget is another important element that often we overlook, but we can discuss it in more detail later. In terms of comms and MEL, MEL generates knowledge through routine monitoring. And if we create a certain routine feedback loop with beneficiaries, and we outline this early on in the proposal, like we have an idea, how can we create a beneficiary feedback loop so that we constantly aware of the satisfaction level of beneficiaries with our projects, or staying abreast of the changes in the behavior or mood, or things like that would constantly give us a feedback of what we are doing on the ground. And then use communications as a powerful tool to, first of all, inform the public of how we use monitoring to constantly check on the project results, but also use it as a direct communication tool, because it's not only monitoring. In essence, feedback loop is a communication tool as well. We both communicate and gather some intelligence to inform the project. So yeah, that's what I meant, and outlining it in the proposal could just be something interesting that donor might be interested to look at, because it's not a secret that one of the important elements for the donor is the visibility of their investment, but also of the good results that are being achieved through the help of those donors. And communication is one of the things that donors usually are looking at. So by combining MEL and communication into something more meaningful than just producing a report, or considering just communication as a success story tool, we could show that we are really taking it seriously, that we are not only producing results, but we are constantly communicating on lessons, that if something goes wrong, we are open about discussing how can we improve things, and etc. So yeah, that's what I meant. I hope this answers.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Leah. I would like also to remind all participants that we will have Leah also joining the next webinar on project implementation, and of course a dedicated webinar on monitoring evaluation. So we'll be able to ask more questions to Leah, but also to hear more from her and other colleagues about this monitoring evaluation at different stage of project development and then implementation, because we reckon that's a key topic, and that has been highlighted as part of our needs assessments, that you guys are requesting more support in terms of monitoring and evaluation. And I can say from my experience, that's something that is unfortunately often overlooked. Yeah, Kedera, you want to? Kedera? No, just turn on your mic. Okay. Any other question? I think it's a chat. No question. You either start to get tired by this webinar series, or we remain very clear. I opt for the second option. Okay, if no more question, we have another quick Q&A session just following the next and last two presentations. So I would like to welcome now Anna Dinald, who's our new colleagues. I mean, you joined us a while ago now, but fairly new colleagues at SPC, and your climate finance advisors within the CFU unit. Welcome, Anna, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ludo. Good morning from my end. My name is Anna Deinhardt. As I was just introduced, I'm a climate finance advisor at SPC, located within the climate finance unit here at SPC. So yeah, I will now focus the next 10-15 minutes on securing funding, what kind of opportunities are out there for you to finance your NbS projects, what are the priorities that donors are looking at, and how to develop a strong concept notes, what are some of the aspects you need to consider. And I hope I remember when you go back to the Slido in the beginning, that this will answer some of your questions in terms of, yeah, where can you go to, what are the what are some of the venues for financing for your projects. So, but as we start talking about climate finance, just starting at the beginning with what some of the basics. What actually is climate finance? What are we talking about? Climate finance refers to financial resources and instruments that are specifically used to support actions aimed at addressing climate change. So these are actions that can involve both mitigation, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, or and adaptation, so building the resilience to climate impacts. Of course, we talk about this webinar is aimed at NbS practitioners, nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions can be a lot broader than looking at climate change, but the funding venues we are now looking at as part of this presentation are specifically to climate finance, so NbS that correspond to climate change impacts. Climate finance can take many forms. It may be provided through grants or through more complex financial instruments, for instance, green bonds, equity investments, or concessional loans. It can come from public and private actors that can operate both nationally but also internationally, and it can be provided by bilateral or multilateral sources. The major multilateral donors in the public sector are the Green Climate Fund, the Adaptation Fund, and the Global Environment Facility. So for today's sessions, I'll be focusing on these three funds. I'll briefly walk you through the main characteristics and priorities of each one of these funds to help you better understand how to select the right funding source for your NbS project. So let's begin with the Adaptation Fund. Adaptation Fund was established in 2001 under the Kyoto Protocol, officially launched 2007 to finance concrete adaptation projects. Since 2019, the fund also serving the Paris Agreement, so it has expanded its reach and relevance in that sense in the climate finance landscape. It's the smallest of the three major funds that we're discussing, but it has still made quite a significant impact since 2010. It has allocated about $1.25 billion for globally for adaptation projects. The Adaptation Fund focuses on three main strategic areas. So it is focused on financing action, implementing projects, even pilot projects for adaptation initiatives in eligible countries. It is also very much focused on innovative approaches. So if you have a very innovative, something that's relatively new in the field of adaptation, NbS, the Adaptation Fund could be your window, as it's really, looking to further innovative approaches and also learning and sharing, so promoting knowledge exchange, learning from implementation and replication of successful models. And countries can access, it was just, has just increased its country cap, so countries can access up to 40 million for adaptation projects through either a national implementing entity, if there is one in your country, or through a multilateral or regional partner. Then the GCF, it's the largest dedicated climate fund in the world. It was established in 2010. It's also serving the Paris Agreement. It has become fully operational in 2015, and it's currently in its second replenishment cycle. Since at the end of 2024, so it had confirmed close to $10 billion in pledges for this current ongoing second cycle. The GCF finances projects across 8 strategic impact areas, 4 in the mitigation and 4 in the adaptation area. It is committed to a 50-50 balance between funding for both adaptation and mitigation, with a particular emphasis on supporting countries in the implementation of their NDCs, their NAPs, their LTS, long-term strategies. So the fund operates on the principle of country-led programming, meaning that proposals must align with national priorities. We heard that's also coming up already in some of the previous presentations. It is in particular focused on trying to enhance financing going to SIDS, and also the financing that is channeled through direct access entities, so national entities that can access the fund. And the GCF evaluates funding proposals using 6 investment criteria. So these would be quite crucial. I will go into more detail in a couple of slides, but these are quite crucial when you develop a GCF proposal. Your proposal will be appraised against impact potential, so the extent to which it can contribute to climate goals, paradigm shift potential, how transformative is your project, sustainable development, like the co-benefits that are generated through your project, the needs of the recipient, the country ownership, but also the efficiency and effectiveness, so the value for money and potential for scale or replication of your project. And then lastly, the GEF, established in 1991, so it's been around for a while. It serves as a financial mechanism, not just for the UNFCCC, but also for the Convention on Biological Diversity and the Convention to Combat Desertification. So it has a much broader focus or broader scope. It operates through multiple trust funds, each with a different strategic focus area. It's currently, the GEF Trust Fund is in its 8th replenishment cycle, so GEF 8, covering the period from 2022 to 26. The current thematic focus of GEF 8 is on biodiversity, climate mitigation, and land degradation neutrality. So if you, for instance, have an NbS proposal in mind with a very high mitigation potential, then funding under GEF 8 could be an opportunity for you. GEF is allocating its funding using what's called STAR, System for Transparent Allocation of Resources. So under the system, countries receive indicative envelopes. The minimum is 2 million per thematic focus area. And it's based on 3 key factors: environmental potential, country performance, specific needs. So this sits as relatively small countries would have to check, to be honest, but I think all SIDS in the Pacific are eligible for the 2 million per thematic focus area. But then if your project would have a more adaptation-related focus, there are 2 other trust funds, specialized trust funds under the GEF that would be a better venue for you. There's one, the Special Climate Change Fund. It focuses specifically on adaptation needs of SIDS, but also technology transfer, innovation and private sector engagement. There's no country cap applied within the SCCF, but it's quite competitive kind of like application process. And then there's also the LDCF, the Least Developed Countries Fund. It's not be applicable for all Pacific SIDS. I think it would be only, one of the target countries of this webinar, but Tuvalu, Solomon Islands, Kiribati, who could access the LDCF. There's also no country cap applied, but the LDCF is trying to distribute, like choosing an equitable access in terms of distribution of its funding. So just now moving on from these kind of like key points on the 3 major funds. Now, how do you develop a good concept note? When developing a strong concept note for climate finance or one of these funds, it's important to recognize that, of course, each fund has its own very specific templates and criteria and processes in place, but there are several core elements that are consistently required across all of them. So one of the most critical elements is the climate rationale that you need to demonstrate. So your project must directly respond to a clearly defined climate change issue, supported by robust evidence. So this includes usually demonstrating observed and projected climate-related vulnerabilities, the specific impacts on the target sector that you are aiming at with your project, and then the mitigation or adaptation needs that are arising from these impacts. And then your proposal needs to articulate how the interventions will result in measurable benefits, for instance, the enhanced resilience to climate change of the beneficiaries of your project. It is also for you essential to distinguish between a general sustainable development activity and those that are climate specific. So do your interventions directly respond to a climate change impact? A key principle in that regard is also the concept of incremental cost. So this means that usually only the portion of the project that addresses the additional costs that are incurred as a result of climate change will be funded, For example, if your project addresses the for instance, the degradation of coral reefs due to ocean acidification or warming, that qualifies as a climate finance project. But if the degradation is, for instance, caused by overfishing, then the specific activities related to fisheries management cannot be financed by climate finance. They would have to be financed separately, maybe through co-financing that your project would provide. But these are impacts that this will not basically correspond directly to climate change impacts. Then also, to make a convincing case for investment, the concept note should include a clear theory of change. So you need to explain how the project will contribute to shifting basically the current baseline, the country's development pathway. Usually a theory of change or strong theory of change will be grounded in an analysis of the context in which the activities will take place. It will involve a clear problem statement. It will involve the identification of the key barriers that the project are facing, and then lay out how the proposed interventions of your project remove or reduce these barriers, and then how the activities in the end will result in the specific outputs and outcomes and eventually create an impact. And then it's also something that came up already several times. You need to demonstrate the alignment with national priorities. In the case of these 3 funds, they want to see, is the project already prioritized as part of maybe your NDC, NAP, of a regional framework, any other climate change strategies, also, for instance, for the GCF country program. Again, also something that's come up and that these funds also want to see demonstrated is the stakeholder engagement, the consultations that have taken place with the relevant key stakeholders, the national and the community level. Also the involvement of the national focal points. Each of these funds has a national focal point, and these are the ones that need to endorse the concept note or the full funding proposal. So it's important to involve them as well early on. And then, of course, the very specific criteria, like the investment criteria, like for the adaptation fund, the outcome area, or the innovation of your approach, and the GEF that is putting a strong focus on multifocal integration and the provision of global environmental benefits. Just some last practical entry points. So again, it's important to involve partners early on. You will likely access this funding through an implementing partner, be it a national accredited partner, for instance, such as the Fiji Development Bank, or regional partners such as SPC, SPREP, or one of the multilateral partners, as well as the relevant focal points for each fund. Then again, the relevance of building on what is already there in existing, the national planning policies. And also, as a last point, actually I have a couple of more slides, but when these funds are, of course, providing quite large sums of funding. If you're rather looking at maybe doing a scoping study, or you still need to do the feasibility for your project idea, there are smaller grants available. There is readiness support available, so different windows that might be a better option. So it's yeah, of course, important to assess that. And an early stage. Then I won't go over this, as I think I'm also running out of time. But this is also for your perusal. I'm aware you will receive these slides at the end after the webinar. So basically a summary of the different key parameters of these 3 funds. So an overview for you on the different financial instruments that can be accessed through the to the different funds, but also the funding sizes that are provided by the Adaptation Fund, GEF, and GCF, as well as some more background on the project review process and the support that you can receive if you aim to develop a full project proposal, which comes basically usually after the concept note stage. And also, as I mentioned, again, the importance of the national focal points. So for you here, an overview for each of the funds on the relevant focal points that you could reach out to, as well as some further information on accessing the funding and the project development cycle for each of the fund. And of course, also at the CFU, we're also available for discussions on your project ideas and to also advise you in terms of what could be with the right funding window. So yeah, please also, of course, feel free to reach out to us. So I'll stop here and thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna, and congratulations for covering all of that in just the right timing. I know it's challenging, but usually the type of presentation that require a full day or something like that, a topic. But yeah, thank you so much. And also, yeah, to remind to all participants the ongoing support that we are providing either through the CFU for this fund or like all the type of support that the rest of the team can provide. Thank you so much, Anna. Okay, let's move to the last and presentation for today, and then we'll have a short Q&A session again and a short breakout group session. So I would like to give the floor to Christiana, who's Vice President of the Itoke Women in Conservation. Very glad to have you with us, Tiana. So I give the floor to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you clearly. We can't see in full screen. We see your screen actually. Ah, yeah, perfect. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Bulavinaka, everyone. My name is Cristiano Diadio from Itoke Women Conservation, and we'll be sharing about some of our successful funding proposals and projects that are ongoing and have been implemented. So I'll be talking about who we are. We try to align our projects to global goals, and also registered networks, partnerships, and engagement, community engagement, our community engagement strategies, successful proposals, and funded projects, and also some of the lessons that we've learned on facilitating the projects, implementing those projects. So I'm sure we had presented earlier in the webinars, I think the first or second webinar. Maybe I just provide a short reflection again on Itoke Women in Conservation, who we are. So as you can see, we were all, the group started off as us we were under the climate change program at USP, and then we wanted to utilize our skills and knowledge to support our communities given the urgency for climate action. So we came up with this group, and we were able to start with facilitating projects. We looked at projects around blue and green carbon, mainly ecosystem-based adaptation. So we've been doing a few projects within some of the rural communities. So initially the plan was to facilitate, implement work within the communities that we're from. But due to the ongoing work that we've been doing and creating visibility on it through social media, there's been a lot of interest from other communities as well. So we've also tried to, if you can see here, we have if not us, then who? If not now, then when? Knowing the important role that we play as youths and also young women in the communities, we've realized that we needed to step up and look for community solutions and support the communities, our communities. So our vision, empowering women and youth in local communities to collaborate and conserve a natural environment. And those are our pillars: biodiversity and conservation, protecting our Vanua, health and well-being. We try to address this holistically and understanding that, when our land is degraded, our resources, our ocean is depleted, it also affects us, and also sustainable, equitable economy. And for the work that we do, we try to ensure that it is aligned to the global goals, the SDG goals, and We have here SDG 5, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And also we try to align it to some of the the Fiji's NDCs. We've been implementing some of the projects around restoration, and we've worked closely with the government ministries to implement some of the work and ensure that these efforts contribute to national efforts as well. And also conservation on biological diversity. Um, so we registered under Indigenous and youth networks to strengthen our voices. So our perspectives are represented in decision makings. This is from the this is in Pacific and global spaces like COP. We had a few of our members that attended it. It also, we felt like registering under International Indigenous Women's Networks and CBD Women's Caucus Network. It helps us to connect to a wider movement. Being part of this network allow us to collaborate with other grassroots groups, help us to share our knowledge and also build solidarity across communities facing similar challenges. So many of the funding and training opportunities designed specifically for Indigenous peoples and youths. So registration opens these doors to help us access the right support for our locally driven solutions. Why we need funding? So initially we started the group with fundraising, implementing projects in communities through fundraising in communities, and also there was a lot of voluntary work contributing to the work that we've been doing. And also currently the work that we still do on the Itaukei Women Conservation is also still voluntary. So as the project grew, we realized that we could not sustain the work just by securing securing funding through fundraising. So we thought there were a lot of opportunities for grant opportunities for initiatives around women, youths, and Indigenous communities. So these were our focus groups. These are some of the work that we do. We focus on these vulnerable groups. So we realized that we could tap into these resources and pursue our applications. So through applying for the grants that I'll be sharing, touching on in the next slides, we were able to slowly scale up our projects, starting with the very small grants and then moving up to bigger grants. Also, like Ludo mentioned and the others have mentioned, the importance of partnership and engagement. So through our projects with the communities, we have engaged with government, Ministry of Youth, Itaukei Affairs, Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry, and we've also been part of programs, community programs with the Regional Pacific NDC Hub and the other partners. And we're also grateful for the funding support from our donors to implement the work that we were able to do within the communities. So community engagement and strategies, our approach, going to local communities is always important to ensure you build that trust with the communities. And a lot of times these are through informal conversations with the communities, and also before even coming up with a project proposal, these are also identifying, like needs, the community needs, because then only then the projects are sustainable. Also in the Itaukei community settings, we must also ensure that we respect Vanua protocols and traditional leadership structures. And also when we go to communities, because these are mainly patriarchal in Fiji, we try to have group discussions. So we have focus group discussions with women's youth, with women youths, and also a separate one with the village elders, just so that we can get that like collective inputs to how we can better support projects within the communities. Our key principles, always ensure that we are there to also listen, understanding that the communities, they are also very knowledgeable in managing their resources. So it's always, we've always ensured that we practice that, ensure transparency at all stages, proper communication with the communities, and also creating space for women to lead and co-design initiatives. And some of the outcomes that we've seen from this is like really creating that good relationship with the communities, and also focusing projects that are based on the needs of the communities. It had helped to build strong ownership of the projects following the completion of the project. And also these projects are grounded in lived experiences and cultural values, and also there's long-term support and through relationship building. So how we created successful project proposals, like I mentioned before, we've always ensured that our projects are based on community needs, and and that are locally driven and impactful. We ensured that our project focus on practical, achievable goals and measurable outcomes that funders could easily understand, and also something that we could implement. We also try to align our projects and with funding priorities, and understanding that this is like some of the main criterias of most of the grants that we've seen is the focus is mainly on youths, women, and also indigenous communities. So we try to tap into grants that focus on that. So we included. We try to also ensure that our work throughout the projects, we ensure that we have proper documentation of our work, just so that we can show this as evidence and testimonials for the work that we've been doing. And also we try to, because like getting information from the community can be time consuming, and at times it's not easy to get all the required documents. So we try to get that in advance to meet deadlines when submitting our proposals. And also in the proposal, we communicate our limitations honestly, because given that this is our volunteer work, we are all the members of Itauke Women Conservation are all embedded in the different organizations, governments, and NGOs, and we've all tried to pull in to support the projects the projects, and also the requirements to report back to the donors. Some of the projects that the funded projects, successful funding that we got was through the direct aid program. So these were projects that were in around $5 USD, and then as we scaled up, we now are getting have projects that that is around 20 USD. So we started with the direct aid program, and we supported nursery constructions within the communities, and also we did trainings on forest management, conservation work, restoration efforts, and similarly with ANI, we've done that for the Kandavu project. We've collaborated with government, Ministry of Forestry, Agriculture, and and the other partners to facilitate work in Kandavu. And also understanding that the community, isolation, the communities that are isolated, we needed to plan proper how we did we would go back to the communities and do monitoring and evaluation. And also the other grants that we applied for was Green Grants, Global Green Grants Fund, and also Synchronicity Earth. So Synchronicity Earth mainly focus on funding projects for youths around ocean conservation. And for NE, this were funding for indigenous women to implement projects within their community. So we were fortunate to be able to access these fundings. So like I mentioned, securing donor support. One of the things that we always had to ensure was maintain regular updates and clear communication with our donors, ensure transparency and accountability in reporting. And also in our reporting, when we try to ensure there's visual stories and the community voices are reflected in the outputs and in the community in the reports. And also we collaborate with NGOs. We collaborated with NGOs and government networks to amplify our reach. Some of the lessons that we've learned for the successful grants that we've applied for so far is an effective project is one that is grounded in community identified needs, and also integrates financial sustainability through livelihood or income generating opportunities. Because sometimes when we just do a project and it's not also generating a source of income for the communities, it's a project that we found was not sustainable. So these are options that we try to these are opportunities that we try to reflect in our proposals. Also, we also try to maintain strong internal teamwork, ensuring that despite our busy work schedules, we're able to effectively implement the projects and also produce a feedback within the timelines. And like I've mentioned, we started with a small grants, and then as we moved on, we were able to scale up our projects, and then also look at some of the lessons that we needed to implement in the other projects. Also documenting stories, successes, and lessons for future proposals, and stay visible. So we were also, through creating visibility on our social media pages, we were able to receive opportunities to attend forums, and also opportunities for grant funding, and also opportunities to implement projects within other communities that are vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So that's all from our end. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chana. It's really good to see all the great work that Itoke Women in Conservation is doing. So, and also to hear in practice what we just previously discussed theoretically. So that's really, really nice to see what it can lead to. So again, congratulations for that. Okay, let's take a few minutes to answer some of your questions, if you have so. To Tiana or to Anna or to any of us if you missed one. We've got a shy group, huh? Thought we were becoming family after all this time spent together. Okay, if no question, maybe I leave the floor to Rakesh. She will guide us through the group work exercise. Thank you, Rakesh.
Thank you, Ludo. So now we are going to a very short breakout session. We'll have a discussion in the chat box. I have already listed the question that that we will discuss in this group on session. I'll also quickly share it with you here. So this is mostly about MEL. like tracking success for the topic is tracking success of NbS through MEL, it's monitoring and evaluation, and it's as a community driven and adaptive approach. So the two questions that we have is, what does success look like for your NbS project? So in the group, you will have 8 to 10 members in your group session, where you can look at like what short-term and long-term changes you are aiming at, or maybe how do you define success from local community perspective? And maybe you can look at what indicators or evidence would show you that you are making progress. So what does success look like for you in your NbS project? You can look at community level project or any project you're working on. And for the second question, how can your community be involved in the tracking process? As you all know, at the end of the day, it is the community that puts projects in action, and they are the best one to even track the progress. So here, what roles can community take in observing, collecting data, also interpreting results, interpreting data? And are there local tools or platform or even traditions, for example, seasonal calendars, storytelling, mapping, that could feed into MEL at this time, and what support is needed? For example, that's more training, simple tools that you can use. So these are some of the points that you can discuss when you break out into your group session. So these are the questions, and I've also put it in the chat box. So now I'm putting you in the breakout session group, and we'll very soon go into that session, and we'll give you 10 minutes for this discussion, and then you'll come back to the main group where all the three groups will, we only have 3 groups today, and all the 3 groups will just briefly discuss what they found. Please, while you are discussing, allocate someone from your group who can talk on the brief points that you have discussed. So I'll open the group for you now. Please join the groups as just select join, and you'll go into your group. Okay, thank you, everyone. I welcome you back to the main room, and I hope you had a fruitful, quick discussion on the 2 questions. So before, without further ado, as we don't have much time now for this session, we will start with the presentation. So requesting if group 1 can go ahead, present the ideas that you have discussed in your group. Group 1, I can give the floor to you now.
Oh, we had an issue, Kirsten. We are being
Yeah.
into room.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Yeah. In office you all come in here.
So in Ludo, in 39 seconds, they will be back again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello everyone, Anthony from Ministry of Agriculture, Fiji, Group 1. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You can see your screen, Anthony. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll just present on an example that we're implementing on the NbS project. We're implementing NbS seawall. So on the monitoring and evaluation, here's a photo of NbS seawall that we have just completed in Navalau village in the Ra province, Western Division, Midilevu. So what does success look like for the NbS seawall project? On the ecological successes, we note the increase in biodiversity, example, return of marine species, mangrove growth, sediment retention, reduce coastal erosion, improve water quality due to natural filtration, climate resilience aspect, the reduction in wave energy and storm surge, enhanced shoreline stability over time, carbon sequestration. On the social and community benefits, the increase in community safety from flooding, improvements in the livelihoods, example, ecotourism and sustainable fishing, strong local ownership and stewardship of the seawall. On the economic viability aspect, cost savings compared to the traditional hard infrastructure, and the long-term maintenance feasibility through the community involvement. On the adaptive learning aspect, regular adjustment based on monitoring data and community feedback, knowledge sharing with other coastal communities. On how can the community be involved in tracking the progress? First one is participatory data collection by training locals to monitor the erosion rate, biodiversity, and the structural integrity. Community-based evaluation, holding of regular meetings with the community who use the participatory method to track changes in the shoreline and habitat, conduct survey to assess perceived safety and economic benefits, local knowledge integration, the incorporation of the indigenous and the traditional knowledge on the coastal dynamics, and the engaging of elders and the fishers in assessing the ecological shifts, and the adaptive management and learning, the establishment of a community-led seawall committee for oversight and the sharing of lessons with the neighboring villages and the policymakers, and adjusting the design and maintenance based on the seasonal observations. In conclusion, a successful NbS seawall is one that strengthens nature, protects people, empowers community through active participation in monitoring and adaptive management. By integrating local knowledge with scientific data, the project can evolve sustainably while maximizing climate resilience and social benefits. Thank you from Group 1.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Group 1. That was presented really well. Requesting Anthony, if you could just maybe share the presentation with me, and I will share it with the rest of the participants when I share the post-webinar resources. Can we have Group 2 to present now? Anyone from Group 2 would like to present?
As long as it's false, like video, you can put it in.
Okay, can we have Group 3 to present?
Thank you, Rakeshni. So
Yeah.
for group 3, there were 2 examples shared, the one from Fiji and also from Vanuatu. So I'll be talking about, on behalf of group 3, we're sharing about Fiji in terms of the perspective of a small grants program. I coordinate the small grants program here at UNDP. And just in answering the questions that we were given, what does success look like for your nature-based solutions project? So we have community-led projects, not specifically nature-based solutions, but it's touching principles of nature-based solutions. And for us, success in these projects include things like communities being able to tell stories about their projects because they've been involved at the design phase of the project, because in most cases they are the ones who design and plan the project, and also they propose solutions. And when they are able to communicate their projects, they begin to talk about milestones in the projects, the interventions, and also they reflect back to the planning and what they've been able to achieve. So for us, that's what success looks like. Communities just being able to talk about their projects from the design phase, and also when they're beginning to achieve milestones in the projects. And also, I think, how can your community, the second question, how can your community be involved in tracking progress? One of the things I shared with the group is the fact that with Itoke communities or the Fijian villages, the beauty about working with them is the existing structures in place. We have through the Ministry of Itoke Affairs, we have the village administrator or the Turangani Koru. And also we have development committees within the villages or even district level. And so they have progressive reporting periods. And one of the things we try and encourage, apart from just reporting to us on the project progress, is them including the project progress in these reporting requirements. So they report their projects to their partners and also Ministry of Itoke Affairs through the existing monitoring and evaluation framework that they have with the ministry. And at the same time, these projects, they actually get reported to the district level and also even to the provincial council meetings. I think this is a good way of tracking progress for projects, that it's being transparent, not only at the community level, but all the way up to provincial level. And also, I think it's very important if we are running projects in communities that we do trainings and involve committees that are already in place, because then this supports the sustainability of the projects that we are partnering with communities on ground. And so I think our conversation was around those areas in terms of tracking progress and also defining success for projects in communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Group 3, for sharing your views. Group 2, if anyone wants to still go ahead. If not, you can also share your views in the chat. And thank you for your discussion and also feedback and sharing it with the team. I'll give this floor back to Ludo.
Thank you everyone for your participation following the series of presentations. These are very, very good examples, and that shows really that you're all very familiar with this principle and the concept. So thank you all for participating today, and also to all the speakers for sharing their expertise. Just to summarize a bit, we've seen how effective planning forms the foundation of successful NbS and projecting in general, from identifying the root causes, testing what's feasible, and ensuring local ownership through inclusive engagement. We touched on budgeting, monitoring, evaluation, climate finance, feedback from the ground. So we covered like a few key aspects, and a few key takeaways I'd like to leave you with is that, again, planning is not a formality. It's the prerequisite for you to get a successful project. It's the core of your development phase. You know that you have tools that we presented to you today, but also resources like us that exist to support you. It is very important to engage the right people early, structuring your ideas clearly, and that will strengthen your chance of success. Again, it's about time, it's about partnership, it's about working together. So that's, if there is one thing I would like you to remind, that's really what it is. As a reminder, today's resources, all the slides, the recording of the session will be shared with you after the webinar, along with some key resources that the speakers have gathered. And finally, don't forget to join us for webinar 6 in 2 weeks. We will take a deeper dive into project implementation, how to run efficiently a project. And also, for you to get the certificate, we require participants to attend at least 6 of the 8 webinars. On the behalf of the PIPIN projects, SPC, and our speakers, thank you again for being part of this session, and I look very much forward to seeing you all to the next session. Vinakavakalevu, Malo Pito, thank you, Thomas. No, before we closing, just last thing, sorry, Rakesh, I forgot. I see the QR code on the screen. If you can just take the time to scan the QR code and provide your feedback, please. That will help us to improve the remaining webinars. I don't know if Jacinta, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, Ludo, thank you. Everything good from my end.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time answering this last survey. That's all we will ask for from you today. And thanks again for being with us today.
Thank you.